Hey everyone. Question. Why do some people seem to move through life just effortlessly while others are just grinding and struggling with little or nothing to show for it? Why do some marriages thrive and crush it while others feel like it's just constant beatdown, just constant exhaustion? Well, by the end of this video, you'll not only understand how the principle of leverage works, you'll also know how to use it to create more peace in your marriage, more progress in your business, and then more purpose in your daily life without burning yourself out. Now, a quick disclaimer. I've made a lot of mistakes in my marriage. And in the spirit of full disclosure, the mistakes that I made were born out of ignorance. Now, that's not an excuse, but it is a reason. My sons are encouraged to fail. I do encourage them to fail and to fail fast, so that's tolerable and encouraged. But what I don't tolerate is them making the same mistakes twice. So I want them to fail, make all the right mistakes, learn all the right lessons, but to never repeat them if they can help it. So I hold myself to the same standard that I hold them to. Once I found out what mistakes I was making in my marriage, I set out to never make those mistakes again. So I just wanted to, this wasn't planned, but I just wanted to say that I felt the Spirit moving through me, and I wanted to make sure that everyone understands that I'm not a saint, but I have learned a lot of stuff, all right, for what it's worth. So what if the difference isn't in, how hard you work, but how you work? What if the secret is hidden in something as simple as physics? Physics is the study of how the universe works. It explains the natural laws that govern motion, force, energy, time, and matter, from the smallest particles all the way to the biggest galaxies. But here's what most people miss. Physics doesn't just explain how objects move. It explains how everything moves, including your money, your marriage, your mindset, all of it. So that's why I'm making this video, is to show how a law like leverage, rooted in physics, can shape your relationships and your results, if you know how to use it. So what the heck is leverage? Well, leverage is the use of a rigid bar, a lever, that pivots around a fixed point called a fulcrum. And so it's used to multiply force, basically. So the farther you apply force from the fulcrum, the greater the output force on the other side. So leverage means a small input can create a massive output if you're using the right tool with the right setup. So Archimedes once said, "Give me a lever long enough, a prop strong enough, and a place to stand, and I can move the world." That's not just physics, man. Like, that's life, that's business, that's relationships, that's wealth. So isn't it wild how the law of physics, things you'd normally only talk about in a science class, how they show up in every area of life? And not just physics, guys. Like, the same goes for wealth principles. Once you understand how wealth works, and it works a certain way, guys. Wealth does work a certain way. It always has. And as long as the earth is here, it always will. But like how momentum compounding and leverage function, you start seeing it everywhere. In marriage, in mindset, in faith, and in energy, in leadership. It's like the universe is telling one story in a bunch of languages. So where do we see leverage at work in real life? In business, Leverage shows up in things like technology, teams, automation, delegation, sales, and marketing. So let's picture a seesaw for a minute, okay? It's a perfect visual for how leverage works. The long board is the lever. The center point that it rests on is the fulcrum. And the people on either side, they represent the input and the output. So if you sit far enough from the fulcrum, you can lift something heavier on the other side with very little effort. So in business, the seesaw becomes a strategy, a small shift, like hiring the right person or implementing automation. It can lift a massive weight on the other side. So I heard someone once put it this way: leverages technology, leverages team, leverages automation, leverages delegation. In other words, your tools and your team are part of your lever, and they help you do more with less. But none of it works until you have a fulcrum, a fixed point. And in business, that might be your mission, your non-negotiables, your core values, the thing your whole operation pivots around. So remember that. The longer the lever, which is made up of your systems, your support, your tools, and the more wisely you place the fulcrum, which is your purpose and your priorities, the more force you multiply. So now we're getting to the part about marriage, right? So I want to show you another picture. In finance, wealthy dudes, they use borrowed capital to make investments. They don't ever sell off their own investments. Why? Because those assets are still compounding. They leverage outside resources so that their internal portfolio keeps growing. So now imagine your marriage in the same way. See, let's say your wife started a business and she's got this project that she's got to get done. And it's extremely important to her, but she's exhausted, right? She's exhausted with the kids, the house, her W-2 job that she's trying to get free from with this business. If she has to pour herself out in every single direction and then tackle that task on top of it all, she's going to have to liquidate or sell off some of her emotional reserves. Her inner joy, her peace, and her happiness, instead of being able to protect and preserve that emotional treasure with the leverage that her husband could offer her to get it done. And then we expect her to be super joyful and loving when she comes back home after having done all that stuff. So let's flip it, right? Let's flip it for a second. What if the husband steps in? And what if he gives her peace and just clears her schedule for her? Now, see, that's leverage, because he doesn't do her project, but he enabled her to do it without interrupting that joy or having to liquidate any of those emotional reserves or having to expend any calories. So he enabled her to do it without interrupting any of that joy that fuels your home. So now her joy compounds and her energy returns and everyone benefits. You see, there's a great scripture in Ecclesiastes. Two are better than one, because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him that is alone when he falleth, for he hath not another to help him up. See, that's leverage, the kind that God designed into relationships from the very beginning. It's a built-in support system. It's a way to lift and protect and multiply each other's strength. Just as the wealthy borrow capital to make investments without disrupting the compounding growth of their own assets, a wise husband steps in to support his wife, not because she isn't capable, but because her emotional reserves are too valuable to spend unnecessarily. So when he leverages his strength to free her, her joy continues compounding for everyone's benefit. So what are the mechanics of leverage in marriage? Let's break it down. The fulcrum, right? The fixed point that everything is built around. That's the shared vision. So the shared vision between a husband and a wife is the fulcrum. That's the shared vision. So the shared vision between a husband and a wife is the fulcrum. It's their commitment to each other's that says, your win is my win. It's the agreement that both will use all of their own resources, their time, their energy to multiply what matters most. So the couple's shared vision is the fulcrum. It's that fixed point that everything turns on. And so the lever is his support. So a few hours of undivided attention, clearing the calendar for his woman, that's the lever. So see, the leverage is her compounding joy. Remember, on one side of the rigid lever, you've got a small input that, depending on where the fulcrum is and how long the lever is, you're going to get an outsized output. So the outsized output is the compounding joy that your girl gets whenever you step in and you apply effort and force in the right place. So her task gets done and she returns, she comes back home full and not depleted. I don't know about you, but when I see these patterns, it blows my mind. So husbands, this part is for you. And if you've been wondering how to serve your woman more deeply, don't just offer more words. I mean, words are important, but offer leverage. Like, see, there's a difference between how hard you work and how you work. Sometimes guys convince themselves that if they go and they work more hours at work to provide more income for the household, they think sometimes that's going to solve their marriage problems. But that's just naivete, because they're working hard, but they're not focused on how to apply that work. So if you can free her up, clear her schedule so she can get the things done that matter to her, that's leverage. And we would be wise to do that, not because she's not capable, but because her joy and her creativity and her presence, they're just too valuable to be depleted. So up until recently, I wasn't really aware of all of these principles working for us or against us at all times in our lives. But when you do this, you're not just being helpful. You really are being strategic. And there's nothing unromantic about that. Like, you're applying loving physics to your marriage. I think that's a pretty dope thing. So you're using what God gave you, your strength, your awareness, your leadership, all of that to multiply her well-being, which pours out into the wealth of the home. But let me speak to a mindset that I know a lot of men carry. This is something that's probably going to be a little controversial, but it's all right. So a lot of guys have this belief, and I just disagree with it wholeheartedly. But they have this belief where they say this thing where they say, happy wife, happy life. It sounds noble and it's sacrificial, and it even sounds romantic, maybe. But when you dig a little deeper, it starts to fall apart, in my opinion. Because while it's true that her happiness matters deeply, it's not the only thing that matters, man. You see, that old saying, it trains dudes to believe that their happiness is disposable, and that peace only exists if they erase their own needs. But that's not love, man, because that's codependency wrapped in a rhyme, basically. So in a real God-honoring marriage, both the husband and the wife matter. Your emotional health matters. Like, guys, your emotional health, it really matters. So don't buy into that lie that happy wife, happy life. A better belief, I would say, is happy spouse, happy house. And notice I didn't say happy husband, happy house, or happy wife, happy house, happy spouse. So your purpose matters. So yes, serve her. Serve her, man. Lift her up. Leverage your strength to protect her joy. But don't do it at the expense of believing that your role is only to just survive while she thrives. Instead, build something where both of you grow, where leverage flows in both directions, where no one's diminished and both are multiplied. So that's the kind of marriage that really can change the world. And that is the power of loving physics. I hope you guys had fun with that one. I had fun thinking it through over the past week. I hope you guys have a phenomenal week. I'll see you guys at the next one.